Councillor Hodgson?
Are we able to require them to dig it down? Because if they go down.
No, it's plan as is. If you don't like it, you can refuse it, but we can't say we'll allow it, but you've got to dig it down.
I just wonder what strength we can put in conditions. Because the other thing, in terms of, it's very clear from the applicant had no intention of going that pipe. I mean, you can have a hazel ridge that can be 4 metres.
Yeah.
A Devon Bank, he suggested it wasn't far off that same pipe that he was referring to, which is actually not really the case. The Devon Bank would normally be at least 2 metres. I don't think there's any intention of that, which again will affect the appeal to the AOB.
Sure. No, I said that. I think members had to bear in mind that it has got permission in principle for a dwelling there of 1.5 stories.
Yeah.
So
several rooms.
So we are constricted in the sense that we can't say it's too high because they can say, well, we've got permission for 1.5 story high. So, I mean, you may feel that the bulk of massing is too great for the AOMB, but that's a subjective decision that you have to take on what there is. But I don't think we can't say you've got to dig it down. No.
But surely, if there's a provision in principle, we go ahead and say we need to over-massing for the site, that potentially could lose an appeal.
Absolutely. So I think that you have to bear that in mind.
So mitigation that really is important at the moment in terms of
I mean, we've got a condition for screening there. You may feel that there should be more screening. I mean, again.
Well, in terms of the screening, so we actually require it to be at least 2 meters.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's something that you can propose. If it goes for approval, you can pass that for an amendment and see what members say. I don't know what our legal position or position is on that. I mean, the applicant made it clear that he wanted to be able to look over it.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I think he wanted to look
like
over
hedge windows.
He said he wanted to look over it. Yes. So I mean, there is a condition that there has to be some planting there. Whether we can say how high it has to be, I'm not sure.
Well, we're looking at biodiversity enhancements, so it's just come back a bit there. I mean, the more you've got volume in a hedge, the more it disturbs biodiversity. If it's just in a trimmed hedge, it gets kind of fortnightly trimmed to keep it so you can sit there with your cup of tea or dinner tonic and look over it, then it's actually not really disturbing biodiversity, but something really flourishing.
Can I just say that within our joint local plan, biodiversity is only applicable on major applications. It's an error, I think, in our joint local plan. We should cover that in the review. But I just hasten to add that biodiversity is not an issue, a material planning consideration on an individual house. Most unfortunately.
Yeah, the black box doesn't do it.
I would just ask the officer, because I understood from the report it was the hazel hedge, and I would believe, and Jackie can enlighten me, but that would be a lot more friendly to wildlife than the laurel hedge.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely know that.
I actually would be hazel hedge, and I'm concerned to hear them say it might be laurel. Can we hazel?
The drawing will show hazel.
Okay, well, we can condition that it is hazel. So wish.
And does it have to be an absolutely solid line? You could have it so that it's undulating, so the softens it.
I don't know again. I know absolutely, and that break it up, but
But to add some variety, I mean, seriously, to add variety to, create a biodiverse environment that also softens the view, then surely you can have a mix.
What we've got is a planning application where we are conditioning that there will be a hazel hedge in front of it. What we're not specifying is how high that hazel hedge should be, or indeed whether it should undulate or not. If you don't think that's enough, then by all means vote against it. But yeah,
Mr. Taylor, I think Chairman, all I was going to say in a similar vein was that you're being asked to approve a particular landscaping scheme.
Yeah.
And as you said on the previous application, it's not for us to design the application.
Yeah.
So it's if you like it, improve it. If you don't like it, use it.
Okay. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm going to move approval. Maybe we can put a condition in about the hedge.
But you'd like it to be hazel?
Yes.
Yeah. Or hazel, or if you want to put something else and then need to get that in writing. I mean, they may come back and say we want to ski beach or something.
Well,
It's fine. Yeah.
no, I think we have to.
Yeah, accepting that. So I've now got a proposal that there's been proposed for approval by Councillor Rowland, and seconded by Councillor Reid. So we will, as per the officer recommendation, so yeah, just on the condition on the landscaping.
The landscape condition, if you can just make it out on there, but no, it was saying new hazel hedge.
Okay.
Can we ask for a condition of, say, 2 metres, because, I mean, it might be 1 metre, in which case it's doing no good at all, is it?
Well, like I said, I mean, you're not going to screen that building out completely.
No, I'm not
What it
asking
is
that.
it's breaking it up.
I'd like it to see the height that's.
Which is one thing in these.
We don't, landscaping, we don't have 2 metres on it. So if you don't think that's landscaping enough, then you're privy to, you're perfectly entitled to vote against it. But what I'm not going to do is to insist that it's 2 metres. Not least because it grows up and it.
Yeah, they will go quite high anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So members, it's been proposed for approval and seconded as per the officer recommendation. You can have a show of hands for all those in favour of approval, please. And those against? 3 against. Thank you, members. That application is approved. Right, let's move on to agenda item extension D, which is Rowan's Cottage, Bugford. And Ms. Houselander, you're doing this one, I think. Again, members, we were there at the site visit, those of us that were there.
If you hold function down and F8, that should give you options. If you hold function down as well.
Just tell me about it, my ponytail. Just tell me about my ponytail.
Would be section.
So this is an application to an annex in the garden, property known as Rowan Cottage. It's in the coastal hamlet Bugford. This is the application. Right. Alex is proposed to go in the garden area, go through Bugford, onto the core of the southern village, this is the main dwelling, and this is the proposed annex. This is the existing access. It's proposed to remove the garage, which is located here, to create more parking spaces, shown in the plan. This plan, then the annex originally when submitted was for a 2-storey building and it's been reduced down to a 1-storey. The annex is proposed to have 2 bedrooms, one, please. So, yeah, the garage will be removed and there'll be 4 parking spaces in here, both for the host dwelling and the proposed annex. Is there a view of the annex as proposed? All elevations. floor plan shows 2 bedrooms, bathroom, kitchenette, and a living space. This is a picture showing the services for the dwelling. Originally, I think the dwelling to the annex. Originally, there was concerns raised about the fact that the soakaway for the property for the annex was on land outside of the application site. That's now been remedied, and the proposal now is to have a soakaway in this location, which will then drain to an attenuation tank in this location, so that the surface water can be managed as it leaves the site. The building, the height, ridge level as far as 5 metres. This is section 3 showing the existing dwelling and the fact that the ridge height is the same height as the eaves that we talked about on the site visit. And this is an image of, as you will recall, there was quite a high hedge in the location when you stood on the road at the back of the site. This is the applicant's image showing just the roof of the dwelling being visible from outside the site. There's a few photographs again showing the high hedge. This is already looking down from up the hill. The proposed building would be annex between here. Just looking from the other direction, so probably from this direction you wouldn't see the annex from this position anyway. And this is the position. This is the garage, which is a single garage, will be demolished in order to accommodate the additional parking, so widening the parking area. The application, as has been amended, both in terms of drainage and in terms of the reduction size, and the recommendation for is for approval.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That's thank you, Ms. Amber. Sorry, my mistake. Members, any questions for clarification?
No.
Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, one thing I was very struck by on the site visit, as well as looking at these drawings, is the knowledge that immediately below here is housing much lower. And the steepness of that road and the loss of that area of drainage and the attenuation tank is where the cars are indicated there. It's potentially, if there's an overspill there, which, the attenuation tank is only so water, they don't actually get rid of it. But, given the rise in rainfall, particularly in the southern extreme locations, I'm concerned about the risk to those other properties, which are older properties, which wouldn't have good soakaways, etc., like that. So it could be very damaging to those old heritage buildings. Are there any, does that concern remain shared?
The drainage expert was content with the revised drainage proposal, so I have to rely on his report.
So it can be agreed by condition, is what it says actually in your report.
It's
It's a
not.
submitted plan does not include DG 355 testing of soakaway design. However, given this is a medium risk site.
Right, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Should not an ancillary building like this be subservient to the main dwelling?
It's subservient in that it's smaller in terms of the accommodation provided to the main dwelling. I think it's a 4-bedroom house. It's lower than the main building. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the planning officer, the SPD actually states, one of the points that actually states is be reliant on facilities and floor space provided by the main dwelling such that it cannot be occupied completely independently. And by the look of this one, it could be. So therefore, it contravenes our SPD in one section there. Even though, be used only in conjunction with the main dwelling, we can obviously condition it. Functionally related to the main dwelling, where the occupant is dependent relative to the main dwelling, we don't know the use of it. Be accessed via the main dwelling or its garden, and not by means of independent access. Well, when you look at it, there, basically it looks like an independent access. I know they're going across a driveway. Be designed in such a way as to easily allow the annex to be used as an integral part of the main dwelling at a later date. Well, that, obviously is not. So I'd say that it doesn't actually fulfil the guidance of the SPD for an annex. It looks very much like a separate property to me.
I think if you review the officer's report, the consideration was that this is in terms of the accommodation, the kitchenette was actually relatively small, and therefore the occupants would be relying on the main dwelling for any proper kitchen facilities, and also the access is shared. The access drive is shared. There's no differentiation between the main dwelling and the annex used as the parking area and the driveway. So I think the officer's report suggests that actually
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? No, which,
Sure, sorry, there is, yeah, I don't know which question I can ask, not what I'm going to ask you. I mean, with all the Airbnb, to my mind, that could quite easily be used for that. Is there any way we can condition the account?
There's a condition proposed which says that the buildings should not be let, sold, that word, other than in association with main dwelling. So that would prevent the it says building on hereby agreed shall not be occupied at any time other than for purposes ancillary to the residential use of the host dwelling, rural cottage, and shall not be used, let, leased, or otherwise disposed of for any other purpose, including as a separate unit of accommodation.
And who polices that?
well, sorry.
There's the great big compliment.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's material. Well, it is material planning consideration, but I mean, it can be policed in the sense that if a local neighbour or parish council is being let out, or then we can enforce against it.
We haven't got any officers, have we?
Sorry?
Have we actually got any officers?
Well, no, we've got, the parish council, is the objector, who obviously Mr. Gray lives right next door to it. I mean, if the committee managed to approve it, then I'm sure that he can monitor it, and any breaches of that condition can then be enforced in the, with due process. But what we can't do is, I think that it can be enforced. I mean, if you believe that it's a condition that is unenforceable, then that is a material reason to review it. But what we can't do is say, well, we think this is what's going to happen in the future, and therefore we're against it. Yeah, sorry.
Chairman, I would just say this is the sort of condition that is included on every other annex that we've ever approved.
Yeah.
And we do enforce the condition when back from where one. I'm very careful with that. So it is enforceable.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Watson.
Given that there was no clear evidence of ongoing residential occupation of the main house, just possibly speculating that they would have the right, they could get this application through, and then do change of use of the whole shebang.
Absolutely.
Into business use, quality lets, the whole lot.
But that's not a material planning consideration.
But do they have to justify residential use? Because, I mean...
Well, they've done, they said it's an annex. So
yeah, but I mean, the actual main house, they're saying that that's the main residence. And
But there's nobody living there.
To be fair, well, I think that's immaterial, because they could sell it tomorrow, even if they were living in it now. It's not a, we're basing it on the property, not the, you know, the status of it.
Okay, I've just got one other question, if I may, just was actually to finish the wall finish, what was that is the cement stuff, yeah? Does it look like that? It could have been timber, but it wasn't coloured, so it was a towel.
So to me, probably, like, it was, fine, timber, yeah.
Actually said it there. Now, the wall being rendered masonry with something, I think it was very clear, and a metal corrugated metal roof. With timber composite windows and doors, whatever that is.
You can get some windows and doors which are timber one side and aluminium the other.
Okay.
So that would be that.
Right.
But we don't know which bits of those, it's timber,
Clear.
it's walls being rendered masonry with some timber cladding.
Yeah, the application is going to be speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that,
Yeah, we will ask them when they come in. Okay. Right, in which case we will now move to speakers. Mr. Gray. Hi, Mr. Gray, nice to see you.
Hello, thank you for accommodating me.
That's all right. You've got 3 minutes, sir, and then at the end of that, committee members may want to ask you a few questions for clarification, if that's okay. But over to you.
One, foul water. The applicant proposes to deal with foul water by a treatment plan, essential, with a drainage outfall into a neighbouring farmer's field, for which permission has been categorically refused. The farmers state that their deed contain no mention of this drainage field and that they will not consider housing drainage on land that they use to raise cattle, they operate tractors and heavy equipment. This is the elephant in the room in this application. The drainage area is also subject to regular flooding, which results in water running down through the gardens of neighbouring properties and contributes to the flooding of the highway. The Environment Agency requires that effluent be disposed of via a drainage field, the size of which is determined by the maximum occupancy, that's of the cottage and the extension, multiplied by the porosity test. I've done this recently. For my 3-bedroom cottage, it was 42 square metres, the drainage field, not the tank. The tank fits into this plan easily. The drainage field appears to be still on the neighbour's land. That's a mystery. Also, the requirements of drainage fields have to be 5 metres from buildings and 2 metres from a boundary. So we think that factor alone should cause a committee to refuse permission at this stage until that's clarified. Second item, we don't accept any genuine need has been shown for ancillary accommodation. As I think has been mentioned in the meeting earlier, the property has been unoccupied effectively since last September, so we moved out. And that property has been extended. It was a granny flat at the start of our time in Beaufort. And so this need this virtual tenant to have with his virtual friends and virtual family needing extra accommodation, I think is not accurate, I'm afraid. The proposed accommodation is separate and self-contained as well, which we view as with a certain amount of suspicion. So we feel there's obvious potential for it later to be sold off or used or just used as 2 holiday lets. Thirdly, the proposed accommodation is near the foot of a very steep and narrow hill. It's a very dangerous spot. If you try and turn there in a car, you have to position your car at a shallow angle to get out. We're all familiar with this, getting out of lanes, aren't we? On that diagram, you see the cars are going to be coming out at 90 degrees onto the road if there are 4 cars parked there. And that seems to us to be dangerous.
30 seconds.
Finally, I want to mention quickly the dominating position and the line that comes on. But my final point is that we're disappointed that Peter Minshall is somebody we met, who's the owner, in all this long consultation period, hasn't made any attempt to contact the residents, some of whom he knows, and explain, perhaps listen to our concerns. And so there have been no changes in the plan that we've seen, hence the little arrow going to the farmers field there. So we're disappointed that that opportunity hasn't been taken up. So we ask you to return the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, there's any questions from Mr. Gray? Councillor Hodgson.
This might be an inappropriate question. Are you living on this side of the road?
This is me.
Oh, okay.
So one of these two cottages, and that side of it's a long gone. Water comes through that way. Highway.
Thank you. And so, are you suggesting then that the water, the drainage for the foul drain, or from the foul treatment, is that going onto your land?
It goes this field here.
Yeah.
Slopes that way and slopes that way.
Yeah.
I've sent the photographs. You've probably seen of 2-3 foot of water that builds up. Then it pours through the hedge. So if it was a stream all the time, then you could put the effluent into it. But it's not. It's just seasonal flooding.
So when it floods come through, does it then come through where that garage and where the steps are supposed to be? Is that where
no, it doesn't. It comes this way, and it floods there. The highway floods there. It's I've been through it many times.
Thank you.
Right. Any more questions? No. Oh, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah. Has there ever been any issue with I see there was a concrete gully that runs down the side of the hedge. So has there ever been any issues with flooding coming off that ground, the higher ground? Does that?
Yes, significant issues. But it's got this road was widened on this side. It used to be a very narrow lane.
Yeah.
But the big tractors and combines couldn't get through. So Mr. Rousman, who probably above there, widened it, and then for over a decade, stones blocked that gully continually because they were washed out. And so the water and also the stones went along there and into Ashbourne Farm, which is Mr. Bivens.
Yes.
And so that's, yes, the water is at the moment. Residents go out and clear gullies. We do this sort of thing because the council doesn't have the manpower, and it's, it's something you've got to clear that gully, otherwise water comes down there as well. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Any more questions? No. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And now Mr. Houston, who is the agent of supporter. Hello, sir. You've got 3 minutes to make your presentation, and then after that, members of the committee may want to ask you questions for clarification, if that's okay. So over to you.
It's an unusual site. It's raised 3 or 4 meters above road level. It's difficult to see in the public domain. The brief was to provide an annex for visiting family members, like a granny annex, but in reverse. An annex to provide the bare minimum for families to come and visit. The initial submission was for a 2-story barn structure with views out the gable ends. There were some objections from the neighbours, and the comments were taken very seriously. They were over the use and need, parking, drainage, and concerns overlooking. The design was revised, and we responded to all the concerns with regard to the use. We prepared a statement to confirm the client's aspirations that it's for family members. It will not be rented. It's not a holiday accommodation. It's not to be Airbnb. And the parking improvements were made to the parking so that the access was better and some grounds were supposed to be removed. Drainage was also redesigned, and we sent it up to Clargester and brought in specialists to consider the size of the attenuation tank and make sure that there would be no issues with drainage, because we're aware that it's a difficult situation. This was also signed off by Devon Building Control, so it achieves building regulations. The overlooking and overbearing was also taken very seriously, and the proposals were brought down by half. It was a 2-story structure. We brought it down to a 1-story structure. We halved the size. We approved this with the case officer, and there was no request to reduce the footprint in any way. and there's a good 4 to 6 metres around the annex. It's seen very much as a garden annex and an unwanted ornamental garden. There were concerns from the neighbours, and so it was reduced significantly. So the neighbour was concerned with overbearing, and so we brought it down considerably. There will be no issues of overlooking from this property because of the deep hedgerow. And we prepared CAD drawings and topos, and we prepared the elevation to prove this. There's a very rigorous process of negotiation, and revisions have been made, followed by the applicant, the design team, and the case officer. And all 3 case officers have supported the proposals informally and now formally because of the revisions that have been made. And finally, quite an overbearing, the annex has been designed within policy to the building regulations. We followed good practice, minimum room requirements, areas and dimensions. So it has a certain scale to it. In our opinion, it's sounding well made, and we've had the support of the case officer all the way along. Unfortunately, the proposals were blighted by some difficulties to do with the drawings being updated and the revisions being completely visible. We look forward to your support, especially as we've done so much to mitigate any issues and revise the design to make sure that we listen to all the comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions, members? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, we've heard that the new district system that's going to go in is going to allow for onto the farmer's land without permission. Is that still the case?
There's an existing septic tank which therefore does flow into farmer's land. There's an easement for that septic tank to flow in that direction, and we got in touch with the farmer and said this is an existing condition and we'll be looking to upgrade that. And so we switched to a treatment plant suitably sized, and then previously he was taking both the foul and the surface water. And so we tried to lighten the load by splitting. So if any additional surface water is coming forward into the soakaway and the attenuation tanks. So we've looked for improvement. The whole scheme was issued to the drainage officer after being approved by building regulations and gained his support.
So it's saying you wouldn't need special permission from the farmer because it's already there, yeah? It's an established spec or
yes.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Well, I mean, carrying on from that, I mean, the previous speaker, the resident there, said that actually the farmer has continued to refuse to allow that. So, I mean, maybe there'll be a legal battle, but ultimately it's his land. So that's just something to maybe raise. But what I want to ask was, in terms of the driveway, which shows accommodation for 3 vehicles, there's 3 bedrooms in this new accommodation coming in?
Just
2, okay. So how much of that parking is currently used by the resident at the moment?
At the moment there's a garage in front of the staircase, and there's probably room for, I'd say there's room for 3 cars at the moment.
But the garage is going to be lost.
We'll take care of it.
Yeah, so it didn't actually answer my question. The current resident, how much parking do they currently use?
She's got 1 car.
Okay, and she lives there all the time?
Yeah. She's gone into care at the moment since the process started. A lot of the proposal is quite genuinely about how does a family come to visit when there's an elderly relative to take care of them in their house. And it was very much seen as a granny annex proposal, but without the elderly person having to relocate. So the family could come down and stay for holidays, but then even into extended periods. Back to the car parking, we would expect there to be 4 vehicles. It's possible for 4 vehicles. The improvement was to remove some additional spoil which was banked up against the neighbouring property, which would probably be causing damp issues in town. So we're happy to make improvements in the
Thank you. Councillor Hammond.
There's a question over the materials for the external walls. Can you clarify, because the drawing showed vertical panels. Is that all timber, or is it a mixture? I think the application says it's a mixture of timber and another material.
No, we want it to be an annex and to be subservient and to be in the style of a barn, and so we kept it as if it was timber cladding all the way across.
So it's intended to be all timber.
It's timber cladding the whole way, yeah.
Is that something we want to condition?
Well, that'll be for members to decide. That's a sort of rhetorical question or to the other members, and that may be minded to approve. Sorry.
I mean, there's a condition on the compliance with the approved plan, and that is the approved plan.
Okay.
Kind of covered.
But the application doesn't state that, it states, Councillor Hodgson says a mixture.
Rendered masonry, it's subject to cladding. But you're not approving after report, you're approving, it doesn't actually say on there what the.
You just need some clarification.
Okay, well, if members are minded to approve it, we will make sure that there's clarification. 6.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Excuse my ignorance. So when you say there is an easement, is this a legally maintained right to dispose in that other person's land?
Okay, Councillor Abbott, can I just stop you there? The legal niceties between the farmer and this application are no concern of ours. If a drainage scheme is approved, which needs to have a discharge into the farmer's field, and he says you can't do it, and there's a legal battle about it, and the farmer wins, then they would have to come back to try and get another drainage scheme approved. But it's not for us to decide whether it's legal or not. So, sorry. What's to burst your balloon there?
Oh.
No, but I don't want us to get involved in legal issues which are nothing to do with it. I mean, whether there is an easement or not is not no concern of ours. Any more questions? Yeah,
I don't know how appropriate this is, but how many bedrooms are in the current house?
I've not been into, I'm not sure. It's a cottage, it's been there since the 50s, they've used it as their family home, and they've had visitors to come and stay. We've got to the point where they can't have visitors, and so in order to keep the design of the annex subservient, we did it very carefully at keeping rooms down to minimum room sizes. So the single bedroom is just 9 square meters, not any larger. And like the kitchenette is just enough to make their breakfast in the morning. We really looked at how we can keep, how do families come and visit and just keep, but at the same time maintain quality of space, because we can't go smaller than that.
Okay. Right, any more questions, members? No, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
So it's now Parish Council. You're going to get a speaker, you're going to come in. Just while we're waiting there, I mean, a couple of the speakers, and I see that the Parish Council and all that talks about vision and the need of this. Is that you need to prove ancillary annex?
No, what do you require?
Okay. Thanks for checking that. Hello, Councillor Holmes, nice to see you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon, is it? Yes, it is now. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Anyway, you've got 3 minutes, and then when you finish that, then your presentation, then members of the community may want to ask you questions for clarification, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. Right, the Parish Council continues to object to this application, primarily based upon the principle of development. The planning application report states that the proposals to extend existing dwellings in the countryside will be permitted, providing the existing dwelling has a lawful use for permanent residential use and has not been abandoned, and the extension is appropriate in scale and design in the context of the setting of a host building. Well, firstly, we're not quite sure what the definition of abandoned is, but as has already been mentioned, The neighbours are unanimous in stating that the property has not been lived in since September 2020. How, therefore, can it be said to be a need for additional accommodation for family and friends of the owners of the host property and spillover accommodation for the owners of the host property if the owners don't live there? How do the owners know there's a need for an annex until they've lived in the property? Rowan Cottage itself is a comfortable family home which already has a granny annex and a decent sized garden. The proposed development removes most of the garden space, making it more suited to 2 holiday lets. It certainly appears to the parish council that this is an application for a second home using the auspices of the planning policy, despite the assurance of the planning officer that a condition will be applied to prevent this. Secondly, in terms of scale and design, the parish council have always been concerned about the accuracy of the drawings submitted for this application. The original 2-storey proposed elevation that you're not seeing here showed the ground floor of the new structure as being on the same level as the ground floor of the main building, which is actually not the case. Also, the 2-storey drawing, which I don't think you've got here, but I've got on here, 2-storey drawing, you see from there, but shows an enormous slope of the land here, shown on the 2-storey development. The slope of the garden would be that this floor would be the ceiling of the prior property. Now, we pointed out this discrepancy, and the architect produced a single diagram that showed both buildings still being on the same level. A new drawing of the revised single-storey building, which is the one that we have there, was produced, showing a difference in height of 500. That, in our opinion, is still not accurate. And we've estimated that the difference in the ground level is near 1:50. In addition, if you've got the very last one on there, what I've got them on here, the rise in the ground levels between the north and south side of the building, which you can see on this diagram, this is the garden slope, and this diagram, which is the original one that they're actually producing at the ground level, the difference in slope has completely disappeared. So what we don't understand is why. And to put quite simply, this has not been explained, and we can't assess if the new extension is appropriate in scale or design in the context of the second setting of the host dwelling.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Councillor Holmes? Jack?
So in terms of what you just suggested to us, where would the ridge height of that current proposal be? Would it be another 0.75 higher? If you go to that, is it the last drawing? One further back. The thing is, if we, just one further back from that. Oh, sorry. Well, we don't know where this base level is because this has disappeared over the 2 drawings. This level, we don't know whether or not they're going to excavate the ground further down, or because there was an enormous slope on the first diagram for the 2 drawings. So we don't really know. We're a bit confused, to be honest. It could be 0.75 metres higher, that ridge, at least.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that, Ms. Houselander, I don't know if you can clarify that point. I mean, we came across it before with the Brutus Centre. I mean, it's 1.7.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure.
Well, what we're trying to say is that drawing there an accurate reflection of the plans as per submitted? I.e., is it going to be higher as suggested by the speaker, or is that an accurate reflection of what the plans?
That's the plan that we've been submitted to us to assess, and so therefore we have to assume that is accurate.
It's not.
Yeah. So when we were on the site visit, we looked at the potential height of the proposed annex in relation to the host dwelling, and we surmised on the site that it would be at the height of the host dwelling, and that's what that plan shows. So
we did do that on the site visit numbers. So if you remember, there was that bush.
So it will be on a level, you're saying then, with
that drawing there.
Yes.
The ridge height there came up to the So the east height of the building that's already there.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because there was that bush, wasn't there?
Yes.
That we reckoned was about the right height.
So this line that is the eaves obviously of the host dwelling, and the ridge is in line with that. So I have to assume that that's what is.
Okay, yeah.
The fact that we were there, it was sloping, there's no indication of what is cut and what is filled to produce the horizontal surface.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously they would make it horizontal, but I think what I would say from the site visit is that we were told how high the building was. There was a bush that was about as high as that. But you remember the wire that came over, and it was about the height of that wire, albeit that was on a slope, but you could see that if you know, as far as the eye can tell, that went across to the level of the E. So, yeah, I mean, that's from our site visit. I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Abbott, that it was sloping, no doubt about it, so it would have to be levelling of some kind.
Chairman, I mean, I'm just looking at the list of documents that are actually on the website, and there doesn't seem to be a survey, a basic survey of the contours that would be so useful in this, because I mean, we can read stuff like that, especially when you see a very steep slope. You can see a lot of contours, and you could actually get a pretty good, accurate kind of guess of what the rise of that height is. And they're not suggesting that they're digging in, which they're not.
Look, for members that were at the site visit, I mean, it wasn't flat, but it wasn't super steep, that ornamental garden, was it?
No, but it's quite elevated by the time you got up into it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I get that.
You can see over the hedge.
Did you?
The llamas can.
That'll be other thing. I think from also, I've been reminded that the agent, when they were speaking, it was going to be cut down a bit. Yeah, well, but look, we've been on the side visit. We've got in our own minds where we think that'll be. I'll leave that up to your own judgment. Okay, whether you can set that or not. Anyway, Councillor Holmes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Reid, as ward member.
Yes, thank you, and thank you all for on Friday, because it does give you a really good idea of trying to visualise what we propose. And the reason I'm bringing it just because of the concerns of the parish council and the residents, and you've heard what they've had to say. It just does feel like, I know it's been, it's now a single story, but it does still feel like it's overdevelopment really, because when you're looking at it, the footprint of the annex is near about the same size as the dwelling. So for an annex, it does seem quite ambitious. But anyway, it's concerns of the parish council and the residents that I thought it would.
Right, any questions for Councillor Reid? Councillor Taylor?
Is this a debate or is it?
No, well, just if you want to ask any questions to Councillor Reid,
No,
and then.
no, I don't.
No, okay, no, if you want to. If Councillor Reid can come back at any stage, but if you want to start the debate, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I got very concerned about this one because for a need. I mean, because you've got a 4-bedroom dwelling that's already in place. You're looking for another 2. Nobody lives in the house. I know they can, but that's not the issue. But the issue is, to me, is the need for this extra annex.
I think we've established that actually need is not necessary. You can have an ancillary accommodation whether you don't need to prove a need, you need ancillary accommodation. I think the issue that you need to weigh up is this subservient to the house itself? And is the bulking and mass too large for the area that it's put in? But as far as need is concerned, that's not a material planning consideration. Whatever your personal thoughts are.
Yeah, okay.
So, Councillor Watson.
I'm very unhappy about the like general plan or discussion around what's been provided for in terms of drainage, because I think this, which I think massing of the sites, is actually meaning that they haven't actually got space on site to address the drainage needs. Given the topography of that site and its immediate environment, I think the potential for having a very adverse impact on the neighbouring properties, in particular the ones much lower with the listed building, I think means it actually we should refuse this application.
Okay,
And I propose refusal.
Okay, members, just on the drainage issue, I would caution you that we have had our drainage specialists say that they feel that there is a scheme that will be acceptable. We've obviously heard anecdotal evidence that we don't think it is. Just on the appealing Green Park Way, which unfortunately we lost, we pulled in a sort of super drainage expert to say that it wasn't acceptable, but the inspector went with the drainage from Devon County. So I think it would be very risky if we refused it on drainage grounds, because we do not have expert advice that contradicts what our experts have said is okay. I just throw that out there. I'm not trying to. Yeah, no, well that's fine. That's fine. But I think it is that. So you've moved refusal. That's been seconded by Councillor Pringle. Does anyone else want to add before we go to the vote on that? No. Now, before we do take that vote, I'm going to want reasons, and that's really where I'm saying I think we should caution if we're going to refuse on
drainage. I think it's development site, and I think it also is not subservient, adequately subservient to the main building.
Okay. Ms. Stanley or Ms. Hassan, are you happy with those reasons?
We're just looking at the drainage experts' actual comments on the website, and he said submitted plan does not address all of the serviceable drainage concerns. So I would not include the testing and soakaway design, and then they're given it's a medium risk site with a condition serviceable drainage.
Okay.
So it's slightly different than Green Park Way, and that Green Park Way would have all the information.
Yeah, absolutely.
We still have our.
But I think what I'm saying there is that he said that there is a scheme that's possible. We just need to have the information. I mean, we're never happy with that, as they do it retrospectively, the conditions of the drainage. But I mean, personally, I wouldn't be happy with a reason to refuse on drainage grounds. We could comment that we would like to see all that, but I think that the reasons for refusal would be the overdevelopment of the site, the bulking of it, and the fact that it's unsubservient to the original house. That's it. Councillor Rose.
Yes, it does say on page 49 drainage comments that the submitted plan does not include DG 365 testing, etc. And foul drainage should be conditioned to be a treatment plan, which is BSNEN 12566 compliant. So they haven't actually got any drainage matters in hand at present.
No, the only thing I would say there is that the drainage team have confirmed that service can be agreed by condition. So the drainage team feel that there is a scheme that is viable, and therefore, as long as that's conditioned after it's approved.
Well, do we know it's in place? Because to me, it doesn't seem to be in place at
present. Well, it's not, no. But
it's a bit airy-fairy.
Okay. Look, members, it's been proposed for refusal on the second bid. The reasons for refusal didn't include drainage. I think just to, so if we could make some comment about drainage, rather than saying, but what I'm wary of is if we refuse it on drainage grounds, it goes to appeal and the inspector says, well, you were told by your experts it was fine, then we get costs, even if we win on the other bits, we can still be costs on that. So my recommendation would be that we comment on the drainage, but don't cite it as a reason for refusal. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I've got a recommendation for refusal on the grounds of bulking and massing, so an overdevelopment site that it's in, and also that it's not subservient to the original building that it's next to. Okay?
Yes.
Draw members' attention to, I think it's Councillor Long mentioned it, the SPD about what is an annex and criteria that should be taken into account. It may be sensible whether members are minded to start saying that it's not an annex, to cross-reference to the criteria in the SPD as part of the refusal. I gather from what we're saying that effectively you're saying there's effectively operating, or it's capable of operating as a separate dwelling. Then in terms of its functional relationship, because when you look at the criteria in the SPD, it does seem to hit a number of those in terms of saying it would be acceptable in the sense that it is within the same ownership, it's access right to the main dwelling, it has a shared garden, it's not separate. So there are a number of factors that you need to be aware of. I think from your point of view, what you're saying, I think, is that it's not functionally related because it's capable of being occupied, that it has all the facilities of a separate dwelling, and it's incapable. It's not reliant on the main dwelling for its use.
But also the point that the parish council raised was about abandonment. And I mean, we're a year now.
Yeah, that's not material fact.
Okay, I just wondered whether what abandonment exists.
In terms of the legal test, it's nowhere near being abandoned long enough.
No.
When the legal concept, we're talking a long period of time.
So I think Mr. Fairbairn's taking it slightly further than it was not subservient in the sense of the size by saying that maybe we could say, and as a result, we feel that it is capable of being its own separate dwelling as such would be contrary to SPD.
Yeah, we've got to be really careful on the wording. We've lost the appeal on that basis.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I mean, I think the two reasons for refusal that we came up with was that it was the massing, and so the size of it, and the fact that it was not subservient to the two main ones. Whether you want to tie in the SPD,
we can include that.
Yeah,
I think there is as many points going against it as go for it.
Yeah, okay.
As Fairbairn said, so I think we need to use that.
Okay. All right.
I should listen to David.
What about the, we also talked about functional relationships, that's the part of the SPD requirement. It's not because it's not next attached.
Look, I've just got plenty of annexes where it's further away than that to the main accommodation. So I
that is true.
That as a reason. I mean, I just don't think that we would. If that was the only reason, we said it. It's fine size and it's not overdevelopment, but it's just.
I was thinking.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think we need to be wary of putting additional reasons that actually an inspector might say that that's not a big reason. I think we want to be concrete on ours, and I think the two that Councillor Hodgson came up with are the ones that we should stick to. I'm sure when it's written out, if we do review it, then you can sort of pad it out a bit with some of those other.
In terms of the formality, is the proposal that we delegated to the head of functions in consultation with them and
local member, yeah.
Or approval of the refusal.
Yeah, okay, we're all happy with that? Right, so we've got a recommendation for refusal, which has been proposed and seconded, which is against the officer recommendation. Can I have a show of hands for all those recommending refusal? And all those against refusal? That application is refused. Thank you very much, members. Right, let's find moving on. So let's go to about 10 past 1. So we'll move on to appeals. Stansbury, are you going to be doing these?
Do you want me to get them on the screen? Or have you got
No, I think if most of the only one of it, the main one of interest is probably one that was upheld, which was it was an officer delegation. It was only a change in variation of condition, which is the last one, Wembley and Wrexham in Castle Brown's patch.
So that was.
That was
just
Yeah. So there was 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings. The drawing showed a lot of natural stone on the elevations. They then came back into vary plots 1 and 2 to use render instead of stone. The case officer felt that the stone was quite important to these dwellings. It kind of sort of broke up the massing a little bit, so it was refused. The inspector didn't agree. I've noted down you mentioned there's a little impact on the group of dwellings of character in the area. Noted there was a render on nearby dwelling that wasn't a character, so they felt that was acceptable.
Now, any other points that
Chairman, could I just raise the appeal which was dismissed at Lower Rockledge, Durham Road, and I think I was really pleased about that decision from the inspector in the fact that it focused upon the TPO trees within the grounds and picked up on future harm from development. So I think that's a really good one. I think I've got to sort of thank the officer and the tree officer for the work they did on that, which the inspector picked up on very clearly. So that's a good result, I believe.
Yeah, no, that is good. And I see it's not coming up now, so it's only just been standard, and that's the barn, West Alberton as well.
Yeah.
Guest officer recommendation, but the inspector agreed and committed.
Yeah.
You bring halfway.
Right, anyway. Any more on item 7? Any more that wants raised? No, and thanks for those words, Mark. I mean, I'm sure that'll go down well with the officers and the officers. So agenda item 9, performance indicators. I'm just going to say one thing that obviously, if you look at the planning workload, it's so that's the third one along the bottom on page 65. You can see that it is going up a bit. My understanding is that I think is it coming to executive, or we are getting some extra planning officers in.
I've had one level 6 officer start this week, now another level 6 officer starting the following week. You know, Rachel at the end of the room, who's now a permanent level 6 officer.
Right. Hi, Rachel.
We didn't recruit to the level 5 post.
No.
She just walked in.
Higher
Yeah, we've just got re-advertised for level 5 and to fill vacant.
Okay, so 2 other posts that you're looking to fill.
Yeah. But as we're finding every other party, there's just not people out there. Everyone's really struggling to recruit.
Yeah.
So I realise I'm clarifying this terms motion. I realise I've only been council for 6 years, but I still don't understand that thing. So your level 6 means
like an assistant planning officer, and then level 4 is like planning officer, and then level 4 is a senior planning officer. So they go up. It's opposite to how you would imagine.
Right. Okay.
And show the numbers, the more senior you are.
Right.
Yeah, so we need to write the Well, can I ask about the apportionment? Because I heard there was recruitment going on there. Is that completely now seen?
We haven't filled the level 4 post. That hasn't been filled, but the other posts have. But again, similar to the 2 new level 6s appointed, they're not experienced officers, so there's a lot of training needed. But I believe we can have to. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the enforcement, I mean, it was sort of on a downward trajectory. It starts slightly in the first quarter of this year. So that's the last diagram on page 67. But I mean, we do know that there was a massive churn within the department. Most, if not all, the enforcement officers left. from Trevor, I think.
Trevor and David.
David, so yeah.
But yeah, there's, I mean, next time it's slowly going down.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on that.
I did request though, I can't remember, the last year or previous one, that we could have what we've had before, which is actually a meeting board members with people for everyone. This is which are the cases, you might remember, I requested about, what called a request from staff to parish council. Planning committee said they could just strike quite a few out.
Yeah.
So they can be there, they know their local staff. We could do that on Zoom.
Chairman, in my ward, we've already done that.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done that recently.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm doing it.
They're doing it. Okay. Well,
Starting to come to the stuff, starts talking.
I don't know, he starts.
all right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think it's a very worthwhile exercise. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's very naughty.
That's not everything, but I just would like to see.
No, I mean, Jackie, it's a very good point, and I think if you can, who should Jackie just send an email in for you?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then try and organise that, and other members, I highly recommend it, you can get rid of the lot.
Exactly, and it's at least understand them, because they come up with like, parish council meeting, and it's,
Yeah.
you know.
That's right, you can send the list, and so there is some, you just think, well, why is that on there?
Yeah.
So that would help. Right, any more performance indicators? No, so note that agenda item 9 are the undetermined major applications. Again, I mean, that's just a noting really. Hopefully, if you do see any there that you feel that you want to get, speak to the office about, please do. Unless you've got a general query on that. No, that's all good. Well, in which case, we reach the end of the agenda. Well done. I mean, it sounds like October might be, we're going to get the probably coming back in October. Sorry, yeah, that's right, the sleeping bags and all that. Or alternatively, you just make sure you delegate all the decisions. Are you fine? No, well, I mean, if it transpires that the next agenda is that long, that we're going to have to take a break, an hour break, and then so like now that we've had a break, and then we've got 2 or 3 more planning again by. Yeah, I don't know what we do about that.
Yeah, bring it back on, I guess.
I can look into that for you.
There we are, being looked into.
To Morrison's sandwich bar.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Chairman, I don't know if the amendments on calendar have been made.